Welcome to the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. This is your host, Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, helping business owners create financial freedom faster by mastering the language of money. Want to see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom? Complete our 40-point financial performance scorecard at wealthhealthcheck.com.au. That's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. The average score for most business owners is 18 out of 40. So complete the scorecard now and see how well you're tracking towards financial freedom. G'day guys, Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor here, and we're here for another episode of the Financial Freedom Secrets Show. And I've got two of my great friends here today. We've got Nick and Warwick from Tradies in Business, long-term friends. We just had a great chinwag talking about business. We typically catch up once a month and have a discussion, and there's always so much value in those conversations. I always walk away a lot better off as a result, and I want to share some of their wisdom with you guys. So thanks for joining us, guys. Nick, how you guys doing?
Thanks, Jackson. I feel like you're setting your listeners up for a fall here. We locked us up. Now we're going to have to deliver.
No. Wisdom. Look at all the wisdom streaks that I've got here. Going well, Jackson. Always a pleasure to hang out with you, mate.
Absolutely.
Great to have you guys here. So for those who don't know you, let's do a quick lay of the land and a bit of an intro. So let's start with you, Nick. Do you want to give us a little bit of the bio? Who are you? What do you do?
Who am I? I'm Nick, or I'm Coxie, or I'm 100 different names. I'm a business coach. I work with Warrick. I'm also a builder's wife, so it gives me a very unique perspective into the trades and the industry at large, particularly at times like this where we all feel a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. And about a bit over 5 years ago now, Warwick and I came together and sort of brought our coaching experience together to create Tradies in Business. It's a program where we work with trade business owners to help them find that elusive balance that we all talk about, grow their businesses whilst maintaining the kind of lifestyle that they would actually like to have, rather than what we see so frequently when people go it alone. They kind of either go through that boom bust cycle that so many of us are familiar with, or we end up in this position where we've got a cracking business, but we're not getting any time to spend with our family. So that's why we do what we do.
Love it. Fantastic.
Thank you.
And Nick's just stolen all of the words that you were going to say, was.
Always.
just took the best bits out of our bio. Look, I'm Nick's business partner, and it's nice to meet you all. No, I'm kidding. My dad was a jack of all trades. He was an old school tradie from last century. Never had proper tickets, but he was a builder. He was a motor mechanic, a screen printer. He did all sorts of stuff. He used to put up big industrial sheds towards the end of his career, I guess. But he was a hard worker. He was a battler, and all of my family are blue collar battlers, and that's kind of my heritage. I went to university. I bounced around a bunch of different jobs and career paths. And what I realized in hindsight, as a middle-aged guy, is I was bouncing around looking for something that meant something to me in terms of doing work, doing my work and doing work and serving people. So, I've been through finance, I've been through accounting, I've been through sales roles, mostly in and around the building industry. I've had my own businesses before. I've sat on boards of financial planning companies and stuff as a young guy. And none of it floated my boat until I tripped over business coaching over 15 years ago. And I literally sold out of the business that I'd built with a couple of other partners and to start afresh at the start of the GFC as a business coach. And perfect timing. And have ended up with Coxie here, a great mate of mine, and someone who is also equally as passionate about the trades and the opportunity that particularly family-based trade businesses have here in Australia, and that unrealized potential that I think a lot of our clients and our prospective clients are sitting on because they just don't realize that there is another way.
Yeah.
That hits home, right? As you guys know, my parents were blue collar as well. Dad was a tradie, mum was a hairdresser. And it's interesting that when we observe the traditional idea of a hardworking tradie business owner, they get to this crossroads where there's often this decision between growing and scaling a business and being fulfilled in other areas of life. And there seems to be like a very much a zero-sum game, that in order to win in one, it needs to be at the detriment of another. Do you guys tend to observe that in the space even today?
Sadly.
100%. I think people think it's like you say, it's one or the other. You either have a big business and big profits and no life, or you have a lifestyle and you're forever scratching around trying to fund it, you don't have a lot of spare cash. You certainly don't have investments or wealth, which, is obviously a big part of what you guys do, Jackson. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think I said it recently in one of our group coaching sessions for our members is it's not either or, it's both. And there is a way to do both. It's just that most people are blind to that model.
Yeah, it's interesting. Nick, where do you think that philosophy, that idea, because it's been planted from somewhere, like I'm sure people aren't born with that idea in their head. Where do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from their apprenticeship, if I'm really honest. I think the trades are inherently hard workers, and they think the way to fix everything is to work harder. And unfortunately, it sets up this mindset that, in order to have the big business with the big revenue and the profit, I'm going to have to work really, really hard, which means there's no time for my family or my friends or the lifestyle. I can't get out on the boat. I can't go fishing. I can't go camping. I can't take a family holiday or do any of those things, much less even just get home and de-stress and relax at 5 o'clock. I'm going to work all night long instead. So I think it really comes from that fix it mindset. I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to fix it. And that's consistently how I'll fix it. And that's what we see, unfortunately, really frequently still now. I definitely see an influx of that very next generation that's coming through now that have really grown up with tech, and they've grown up with the opportunities that tech brings and the internet brings. And so I can see that they're looking for ways to leverage what they're doing very differently to what most of us have been taught to do. And yet most of us have still been taught that we've just got to keep working harder to create the results that we're looking for.
It's very interesting, isn't it? And I think it comes from this whole industrialized way of thinking, right? Because even if we go back like 50 years, the idea that you would live the laptop lifestyle, it hadn't even been conceptualized yet, right? And I think it's this last generation, these previous generations, that it was a market of labor. It was leveraged through labor, right? And hard work was required. Efficiency was required. It was all about creating that more efficiency in order to have greater output. And we've started to see this shift. We're fortunate that in this day and age, we've got access to ways of simple leverage, technology, automation, AI, this crazy thing that was going on at the moment. But I think it's also that mindset, right? I think that's the one that's always consistent. And my philosophy on this is he who said he can and he who said he can't are both right. If you've got the mindset that you need to work hard and you can't have a great family life, or you can't go fishing or have a great lifestyle, that success has to come at the expense elsewhere, then that's what your reality is going to be. That's a hard thing to convince a tradie to shift that mindset. So what's involved in that shift? Like, what have you seen, particularly in your client base, of people that you've worked with that have made that shift, that potentially had that previous mindset, that scarcity mindset, and then made the shift?
We got a big stick. Don't worry. We hit him over the head repeatedly until it finally
with threats and violence. Look, that's a heck of a question, Jackson. I guess there has to be a willingness from individuals to open themselves up to possibilities. Although they might be standing in a belief and a value set that they've experienced in the past that says, well, results come from hard work and sacrifice. And that becomes a big identity piece, particularly for a lot of the men, because they are generally, I know it's stereotypical, and observations suggest that generally speaking, most tradespeople are men. They have this persistent generational transfer of results take hard work. And I find that's particularly prevalent in the blue collar industries. When you look outside of that in white collar and, the new tech stuff and some of the new industries that have evolved or emerged in the last 10, 20 years, that identity has been left behind. And they're all about leverage and tech and all that sort of stuff. Whereas blue collar are very much resistant to some of those things. And in fact, they see them as almost a denigration of their values. It's like, if you earned $1 and didn't work for it, it must be dishonest, or it must have come at the cost of someone else that really, conflicts with their values. So a big part of the results that we certainly get within our program and that we see with people who do make that shift is they are at least willing to consider the possibilities. It's like, okay, here's what I believe, and show me something different. And so part of the wonderful aspect of our community is that there are examples of people in there where blue shirts or high vis these days. I mean, in my day, it was, everyone wore the blue King G gear. That was a tradie. Nowadays,
I'm still
it's
wearing
high vis.
that. So,
But they're wearing the high vis. They're driving around in a ute. They've got a mullet maybe, and they're killing it because they've said, righto, well, show me. And so those people then go on to become an example for the next person. And so I think it's very much that it's the way tradies learn, right? It's the way apprentices learn. It's like, show me how to do it. They're very kinesthetic. They work with their hands. They're very visual learners. And I think for them to be able to see that, Bill's actually looks like a cool guy. He looks like a tradie, but he's just bought himself a $200,000 boat and he's had a month off. What's going on there?
Yeah.
So I think that creates a bit of curiosity amongst them.
For sure. That creates that momentum, that catalyst, right?
It really does. And I think there was the exact thing I was going to say, Warrick. We need to be able to see it to be able to do it. And in this industry, we don't do a great job of celebrating the wins. Instead, we have this real tall poppy mindset around people that are doing well in the trades. And so I think it has to come down to external people like us accelerating what people are doing in the trade so others can see it and understand, okay, there is a pathway to get where we need to go. So it's not also insular, which we clearly do within our community. We also then try to, we're very actively speaking with the media about industry shifts and change, and again, celebrating what the trades are doing, because there's a lot of positive, and the current narrative is very negative when it comes to the trades. It's a big motivator to why we have sinking a lot of money into creating our excellence awards. There's no benefit to us. The benefit is wholly to the trades as a whole, not just clients, because it's open to everybody. That stuff, I think we need to have more focus on where trades are doing well. And that's been really, really hard to get others to adopt to that way of thinking, because we're so stuck in that negative narrative. So I think, this needs to be supported and accelerated in all areas.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? And I've been fortunate enough to judge your excellence awards, and I'm just thinking back to the responses, and interesting to see, and not divulging too much information around the confidentiality of that. There's a degree of kind of embarrassment of talking about themselves, of like acknowledging their achievements. There's a tentativeness in like, have I actually done anything profound here? Have I done anything unique?
Yeah.
And I think that comes to being prepared to have some gratitude.
Yes.
And not comparing ourselves to others, right? The comparison is the thief of joy, as they say. And there needs to be certain trendsetters, these kind of thought leaders who can say, hey, this is the normal. This is normal. You can talk about this. And I think you guys do a phenomenal job of this. Most people are very closely guarded with their own personal experiences. You guys are very open and honest about your family lives, your business lives, the observations that you see in the industry, the things that you stand for and that you're against. And I don't see this very commonly. I think trade businesses, because it is built on this hardworking, sweat off your brow ethos, there is not a lot of conversation around actually taking the time to enjoy it. So interestingly, if we want to make this shift from hardworking badge of honor to holistic, successful business owner, right? Being a family person, being there for your kids, having healthy hobbies and interests outside of your business, and having a thriving business. What's the foundations of that? What needs to be in place to allow that reality to be true, guys?
You're asking all the excellent questions today, Jackson. It's like you've done this before. I think it really starts with having clarity around what you're doing it all for. So we all have a different version of success. That's how we talk about it in the program. And my markers of success are very different to Warrick's, and they're very different to all of our clients. And so I think we need to have a great understanding of what it is that we want out of our lives. What do we want it to look like? And then we can reverse engineer it. And that's essentially how you create what it is that you're looking for. Unfortunately, what we see overwhelmingly is when we have those early conversations, what are you doing this for? We get the same generic answers, because it's very hard for people to put the time and the effort into thinking about, well, what do they really want? And we lose the ability to dream as we get older. We might fantasize, but it's not quite the same as dreaming. And so I think there's a fair bit of work in the first instance that needs to be done around getting clarity around what is it that I want, because it's very different for every single business owner. And then, of course, we can have conversations on how do we build that out. And the building it out bit it's not easy. It's a lot of hard work, and it is simple. It's quite simple when you have the direction, when you have the shortcuts that can be provided with any kind of program. Everybody's got shortcuts everywhere. gosh, you can do a Google search and find most of the shortcuts. But if you've got the direction and the clarity and you're being held accountable for what you're doing, and then we're redefining what that looks like. So I think there needs to be a regular planning cycle so that you are reminded by what you're working towards. And this is how we're going to get closer over the next X amount of days or the next period. I think that's the real key to them moving through to those success markers. Otherwise, we're a bit directionless, and it doesn't matter how much planning or how many systems or how much structure there is. If we can't keep at the front of our mind what we're doing it all for, we just get lost.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Nick, which is really important for our business partnership, is that I agree with everything Nick says. And yeah, I think part of it comes down to our metric for success. And my dad's metric of success was there food on the table? Was there a roof over the family's head? And that was about it, right? That was how he defined success. And unfortunately, late in his life, he shared with me, which was it was crushing. It was so heartbreaking to hear him share this with me, tearing up, saying he felt like he let his family down, despite the fact that he worked his guts out his entire life and he provided for us in a way that he thought was best. In hindsight and looking backwards through his life, he wasn't home enough. He was cranky because he was so bloody tired all the time. Money was a huge stressor, and he never overcame his own upbringing and his own poverty. And so he carried that mindset through our entire family. And he shared that regret with me later in life. And I thought, wow, what an awful thing to go through your life carrying with you. And so I think, how we define success. And for some people, success is not appearing to be an extravagant wanker. Sorry if I can't say that on your show, mate.
No, mate,
but I just did. And I think that is an awful metric for success, because you're going to unconsciously do things that align with that idea of what it means to be extravagant. Some people might think my life is extravagant. And that's where, Coxie talking about comparison being the thief of joy. I think that's super dangerous. So getting clear on, well, what does success look like for our family, for us as individuals? And it's got nothing to do with the business until you've got that clarity. The business is just a vehicle to create that. And this is the fantastic stuff that you and the team talk about, Jackson, is, business investments, they're just vehicles. They're vehicles to provide outcomes that deliver us what we want out of life. And so get clear on that. And then I guess, in some sense, letting go of the BS stories that we tell ourselves around what's worthy and what's not worthy. Just being okay with our own stuff. That's a huge thing to tackle, which is why it takes a lot of people a lot of time to do this.
Yeah, and this is not revolutionary stuff, is it? It's just the common sense stuff that needs to be done with enough depth and enough frequency in order to have those breakthroughs. Because interestingly, myself, as somebody who has been in this finance space, we help our clients create their financial freedom plans. I've been a financial advisor for 16 years. But with someone with ADHD, I really struggled with future planning, of being able to visualize what my future self wanted. And I was always living in the here and now. No wonder I had this hyperfixation and the inability to defer gratification. It didn't come easy. And I think I'm a pretty good reflection of a significant subset of society, right? Of people who haven't been taught how to plan and don't know how to plan properly. And it took me years to build that muscle, to be able to actually give myself the space and ask myself what I really wanted, not convoluted by society pressures and social media and all of these things, to get really clear on what I wanted. And the interesting thing that I realized, guys, is that sometimes I needed to experience what I didn't want in order to realize what I really wanted. That, okay, so maybe you need to drive the flash car to say, this doesn't actually scratch that itch for me. Or you need to have the expensive watch, or you need to fly in business class or at the pointy end of the plane. Okay, this doesn't define me. This isn't congruent to me as a character. And then you finally realize that you're just a crazy farm guy who rescues animals and grows a long beard, gets paid out on social media. But as long as it sits well with you, you go, this is my race I'm running.
Yeah.
And how, in your experience, guys, how many people are really truly clear on those drivers?
I would say almost none initially. I think it takes a bit of work because, as you rightly identify, we're not taught how to do this. It's not something, these are the fundamentals that really should be taught when we're educated at school. And yet this stuff gets neglected. And so we go from being able to dream really well. Most of us, when we're little kids, we had lots of fantasies or ideals around what our life would look like. And then reality sinks in. It's really not that way. But we've forgotten how to dream and get clear on what it is that we want. What do I really want my life to look like? That's a really hard question for most people to answer. What do I want every day to look like can be really challenging as well. And so we end up with these ambiguous answers of, oh, well, I just don't want to be stressed. Well, that's not really an answer. You're not describing what you want it to look like. You're telling me what you don't want. And I feel like you're right. Sometimes pain's the biggest motivator one way or the other. We either move towards pain or we move away from it. And so sometimes we need to get out in life and experience life before we have the ability to be able to communicate what it is that we want and desire, because we want to move away from pain generally in that case. So unfortunately, it's really rare that we see someone that can clearly communicate what it is. And with a bit of help, it can be done reasonably easily.
Yes. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Having a trusted outsider is often hugely, can create a huge shift for people, because the old thing about you got to think outside the square. But you can't think outside the square if you're standing in the square. Like, how the heck do you even do that? So often you need an outsider to come in and kind of, show you a photo of what it looks like outside the square. It's like, we're outside the square. It's like, hey, it looks like this. Like, oh, wow. How do I get out there? Well, here's how you build a ladder. Or, I guess that perspective piece is really hard if you're trying to do this on your own.
Yes.
And that's where, your business, Jackson, and what we do through our program with our tradies really does bring other perspectives to people so they can go, oh, wow, okay, so there is another view. There is another world out there. How do you get over there? And that question really becomes the impetus for a whole lot of change for people.
It makes so much sense, right? Because once we're clear on that destination, and as you guys rightly said, we reverse engineer it backwards, the pathway becomes really easy to get from A to Z.
Yeah.
So in the context of assuming that you've got clients who go through that, they have that kind of epiphany, they get clear on what that driver is for them. What's the context of your program and what you typically help your tradie clients with?
Great question. Now we look at each other awkwardly to figure out who's going to jump.
And when Nick says great question, that usually means, you're up.
Happy to tackle it.
You start, and then I'll just ride in at the end and claim all the credit.
Okay. As long as you put on your white suit, that's great.
Usual story.
I think, Jackson, look, systems, we talk about systems all the time. They're the holy grail. It's the consistency of the systems that really produce the results that everybody's looking for. And so when we identify what it is that they want, it's really then coming back to, well, what is it you want? How quickly do you want to get there? Because clearly if we want to get there in 12 months or we want to get there in 5 years, the way we do it's going to be very different. So once we have some clarity around those things, and again, what level of support do you have internally or do you require externally to be able to implement what we're talking about? Then it's creating a pathway with them to get them from A to B. But it's getting from A to B, not A to Z. Because if we go all the way A to Z, they get lost in the weeds. So it's really clearly got to be A to B and then B to C and C to D and so on and so forth. So there has to be that frequency of a planning cycle to help them understand, okay, this is the system we're currently working on. What is required to fill out that system? And how do I get from A to B within that system? That's version 1. Then we review and we move forward and we keep implementing. That's not to say without, if they've got a great support team, we can be working on several of those at once. But that's what's going to drive that consistency of results that so many are looking for. Do you reckon, Warrick?
Yes. And there's a lot of misconceptions about coaching and financial planning, going and getting advice. I think a lot of people, whether it's a business owner or a family looking to improve their situation, whatever that is, think there's some fear that they go into something and it's cookie cutter. And it's like, yeah, but I'm at a different place to Bob over there and Mary over here. So if I sign up to this thing, it's all packaged up. It's probably not going to work for me because, I need something customized. And that's something that I think we've worked out how to do quite well is, yes, we have all the standard systems and everything. And as Coxie said, a lot of that stuff's on Google. Like, there's a whole bunch of coaches using similar tools. It's just which order do you use those tools in for you based on where you're at right now, and also what time and resources you have available to you right now. So, if you're a sole trader and you're on the tools and you might be lucky to have half an hour a week, then this is probably a better pathway for you, and this is how long it might take you. If you've got 10 staff and a general manager and you're able to sit in your office for 3 hours a day working on stuff, well, here's a different pathway. Same tools that you can access, you're just going to use them in a different order and at different levels. So I think that's something that not just us and our coaching team, but our community is a big part of actually giving that insight and that internal support to the people within the program.
Beautiful. Love it. And forgive the dogs barking in the background.
Couldn't hear them.
So this is awesome, guys. And you can see how it all comes together. So we've got these modules and these frameworks that we can implement, but it's the sequence in which we implement them based on what these people are trying to achieve that really drives the results. The right thing at the wrong time is likely going to get the wrong result, right? And Absolutely. This is the idea of working with experts who understand this inherently and have been able to help people achieve these amazing results.
100%. When I first started coaching solo, I apologize to those clients, even though they're anonymous currently, and hopefully they don't know where I live. That's why I had to move to Tasmania. No, I'm only kidding. But, I had this green gung-ho coach attitude. I'm going to save the world. And the way to do that is to grow every single business that I work with. And unfortunately, I saw it was only a small number, 2 or 3 clients over the first couple of years that I was coaching, literally grew them out of business because it was, growth is the answer to everything. More revenue, more staff, more customers. That was always the answer. I only had one tool and it was a hammer. So everything was a nail. And fortunately, I, tempered the arrogance a little bit and figured out that, maybe it's not growth. Maybe sometimes it's reduction of revenue and an increase in profitability, or it's better leverage because their goal is just to have the weekends off, So I think that's where I'm really proud of what Coxie and I do and the rest of our team do, is understand that everyone's at a different spot in their A to B. Your A is different to my A, and Nick's B is different to your B. And so it's acknowledging that, but also the commonality amongst businesses means we can do what we do.
Yes. And I think this is a really good point, mate, that's often not spoken about. When you're looking for a coach or a mentor, you need to find somebody who has the wisdom of perspective to get you the outcomes that you truly want, not the outcomes that they want for you. And
Yes.
I've been guilty of this myself, right? We can't want success or a measure of success more than our clients do.
Yep.
And having that level of wisdom that we develop over time and knowing that of who you're looking for, because there's lots of different coaches of all shapes and sizes. If you want 10X, there's a certain coach who's going to help you get that. If you want this amazing life and an amazing business that gives you balance, then that's a very different person as well. And I think that's definitely something that if you're listening or watching this, you'll have a feeling of it. And you're like, okay, these are my people. They're going to get me what I want, or maybe they're not. And it's important to have that distinction.
Yeah,
absolutely, mate. Nailed it.
Beautiful, guys. Well, this has been a great conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, and I think this is important. This is the invisible game of business and life, right? And I think people are chasing tactics, particularly in this time when things are, the economy is not the best. Inflation is running rampant. Interest rates are going up. We're finding it challenging to find good people. We tend to chase the tactics, but we need to drop into this invisible game because this is where the results are. So if guys have listened to this, or they've watched this and they want to get in touch, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
You can stalk us on social media, Tradies in Business, or you can jump on over to the website, tradiesinbusiness.com.au. It's the simplest way. Beautiful. Awesome. We'll include all of the links in the show notes, guys. And just remember, a good idea in theory remains exactly that, just a good idea until you put it into practice. So make sure you reach out to Nick and Waz, ask the question, get the help, and take the next step. And it's going to help you enjoy the journey a whole lot more. Guys, I appreciate you taking the time to catch up and looking forward to chatting again soon. Thanks for having us, Jackson.
Thanks, Jackson.
My pleasure.